All right, continuing from last time where we left off. Last time we created a very simple unit test, and we talked about testing this get key, and we've actually got get key in a couple places. I've mentioned a few times about moving this get key into a base class. Let's go ahead and do that since I've mentioned it, and I keep putting it off. So these are enums, which makes it a little bit more tricky, but the way we can add functionality that can be common to both of these is through default methods and interfaces. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll create a copy of config key and just call it, I guess, key. Kind of a bad name. Let's turn this into an interface. Get rid of these, and let's make this a default method. Now, we're expecting to be able to retrieve the name here, so let's go ahead and add a string name method that our enums effectively override because they provide a name method by default. So now we can come up here to config key and say implements key, and then we should be able to delete this with no problem. Same for system key. All right, so now both system key and config key are providing the get key method through this base interface. So if I look over here, this test should still run successfully, and we can copy paste this and create a system key test. Yeah, everything's green there. System key test we'll use system key.getPort. That should work fine. System keys also have default values. So we can say we can do that, and we've also got dev for mode. So these should work just fine as well. Okay. Oh, I didn't update this one. Let me change that. It's a copy paste problem. All right, good to go. So now if I even clean install from here, make sure everything's looking good with our dependencies and convergence and everything. I just guessed about our JUnit dependency, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a problem there. And there is. So we defined JUnit Jupyter. Looks like we should have defined JUnit Jupyter API instead. They have the same version. So let's go ahead and make that update. So we'll stick API there, and we'll come back up here to our server POM and add API here, rebuild. So the next thing we'll do is add tests for our test resource, our JAX-RS REST endpoint that we've added so far. Okay, so everything's looking good here. Actually, we'll go ahead and commit this. All right, now we're all pushed up. So in order to add tests for JAX-RS resources, we need to bring in the Jersey test dependency. I suspect we get it as part of this Jersey bomb. Okay, I can click on that. Are there test things in here? Okay. Inside here we get test framework core, we get some providers, including a Jetty provider maybe. Okay, yeah, there we go. So it looks like this Jersey bomb includes the dependencies we need. Let me copy this one. And we'll also need this Jetty one. And And so since we have our BOM defined in our top level POM, that means we can jump right into our REST POM. And let's see, we've got some Jersey dependencies up here. Let's paste this one in and that one in. Let's get rid of these versions. Let's add scope test. I didn't see scope test in the BOM, so we do have to add test in here. That's not something that we can skip. Well, I mean, I guess we could skip it, but that means these jars would be part of our compile time class path and would be bundled, in with our server once we get to that point. But since they're test dependencies, we only need them in test scope, so we don't need those to be bundled with our deployed server. Okay, are these sorted? Looks like they're sorted okay. We've got test framework after inject, so this looks good. Let's go ahead and do a Maven reload project to make sure these dependencies are available. And let's go ahead and do a new directory and get our source test Java and get a new package com.tutorial api.rest.resource. And let's go ahead and create a new Java class test resource test. Now obviously this is just a test resource just to verify that everything's working. So we're going to end up modifying this to be a real resource at some point. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and build out an unit test just to make sure this test is working and show an example of how to do that testing. So we've got our test here. We actually need to extend Jersey test, and we can override. Let's see what we can override. So we've got a few methods in here like configure, configure deployment, SSL things, configure client. So what we need to override is things where we do configuration. We shouldn't need to really override anything except for this main configure method, where we need to return the application that provides access to our resources. We do have an application, it's API application. We've got some initial stuff in here like register everything in this package, which would include our test resource. And we've got this empty binder that we can use for dependency injection when it comes time to do that. Right now we're not actually doing any binding in here, but we'll do that at some point in the future. Okay, so instead of just returning super.configure, let's return new API application. And we actually need to add some tests in here. All right, so now we have our green arrows so that we can actually run it. And if I remember, the way we run tests is we invoke a target. Okay, yeah, so we've got our web target here. So we can target a specific path. And I don't remember if we need /API on there. I don't think we do, just because our test resource is just /test. Our API application doesn't have any path configuration in it. But we do know that when we register this application in our server, we bind it into the API pattern, but we're not actually going through the server to access this REST endpoint. We're talking to, or the Jersey test is standing up our API application kind of automatically. So we should be able to just hit this /test endpoint, and we can, I think we want to do, I thought we'd have a .get in here. What else do we have? Yeah, so we can specify query parameters, which we don't really need since our test resource doesn't take any. Request maybe, dot get. Okay, there we go. And this returns a response. And then we can do validation on this response. So something like, well, what do we have in here? Yeah, so get entity is the response body that we can get back. Actually, I think we can say what type of class we want. Maybe not. Let's see what else we get. Well, we can definitely check the status. So we want to make sure we get a 200 status back. Okay, I just typed in assertions, but we didn't actually bring in the JUnit library to use assertions. So let's bring this in. It's in server, but it's not in our REST module. Put this down here. And also add that comment in there. Okay, so let's refresh this again. And then over here, it went ahead and brought in our assertions. Now we can assert equals. Let's run this. Okay, so we got some logging things that we didn't configure, and a JAX-B thing. But other than that, everything passed. So for this SLF4J, SLF4J doesn't have a logging implementation. So what we really need to bring in is logback classic for our logging implementation. Now we only need this for our tests, right? Because the server itself, which is gonna at some point pull in this REST, actually it's already pulling in this REST module and bundling it up and making it available when running the server. So when the server runs, it already has the logback dependency bundled in. So up here, we only need it bundled in for running the tests so that we can actually get some test output. So I'll add scope test in here. This should fix these SLF4J problems, and we can verify. Although I never actually updated the Maven dependencies. Let me reload just that module and click play again. Okay, so now we got a bunch of debug output. It's not using any particular format, it's using the default format, so let's fix that. Up here in our tutorial API server resources, we have a log back for our testing. Let's create a new directory and create a source test resources. So these resources will be on a class path only when we're doing testing. And instead of pasting in logback.xml, I'm going to paste in logback.test.xml. So this logback test is only used when running the testing stuff. So we don't care about all this org.eclipse.jetty debug information. So by having it at warn, that'll filter all that out. We will still see this line from our tutorial API logging level set to info, so we'll still see that. And it should use this updated pattern that we've specified. So let's go ahead and run this again. All right, there we go. We got rid of all that Eclipse stuff. We still have this waddle warning, and we've got this info log message from Jetty test container. It's using a different logging framework. I think it's using Java util logging. So let me clean up these palms. And let's come in here. We should be able to, in a static block, do Java util manager log manager dot get log manager dot. I think we can just reset it and I suspect that will turn off this logging output. Okay, and it did. Now, let me just put a quick comment there. I guess I'll comment that whole thing. Let's run this again. I want to see what that warning is. Potentially we should fix that warning. Yeah, so it's talking about JAX-B context could not be found. I don't know exactly what that means. I'm going to just do a quick Google search to see if something obvious jumps out. How can I resolve this? Simply adding a dependency. So effectively, if we add the JAX-B dependency, that problem will go away. Let's test that and try it out. JAX-B runtime. So order.glassfish.jaxb version 302. Let me copy that. Now before I just add it, let me come back in our top level POM. Let's jump in Jersey BOM and search for JAX-B. So we've got, that's the only reference to JAX-B in this POM, so we don't get any, we don't get that particular JAX-B dependency as part of the BOM, so we would actually have to add it in. I still have it copy pasted. So JAX-B comes before Jersey, so we'll put it right here. And we've defined it in our dependency management. Let's also add it to our tutorial REST module. And right here, no version. So our comment here will be fixes JAX-B warning from Jersey. Now if I do a build, is the dependency plugin going to complain about this because we're not actually using any of these classes? And while that's building, let me run our, well, I guess I'll wait for it. Okay, so we got some dependency convergence issues. Let me go ahead and do an update here. And then run this again and see if that warning goes away with that dependency added. Okay, it did. So we still have this info win, and it's red just because log manager for Java util logging is just printing out to system.out or system.error, and that's why it's red. So we don't need to see this. So I'm going to add these back in. But the main thing is that, so yeah, this will disable logging from Java util logging in this test. And so we're not going to see this. And adding that dependency did fix this other warning. So that's good. But now we need to take a look at these multiple, looks like 4 different convergence problems that we need to resolve. So this first one, we're pulling in JUnit with multiple versions, all coming from Jersey Test Framework core. So basically this is a problem with self-convergence within Jersey Test Framework, right? Jersey Test Framework core is bringing in JUnit version 4.10. It's also bringing in JUnit 4.13.1. And then, okay, this one's actually a different one. This one's provider Jetty is also bringing in 4.13.1. So this is good that we have we have 2 dependencies bringing in 4.13.1. Basically, I can exclude JUnit from Jersey Test Framework core, and that will exclude this one and this one because both of these are Jersey Test Framework core. And then that way we can keep this latest one from this dependency. Hopefully that made sense. So let me come in tutorial REST, scroll on down here. So in this one we're going to add an exclusion for JUnit. And that should get rid of this first dependencies. So let's go ahead and do this clean install and see if we cleaned up that first one. Okay, now we're down to 3. In this one, we're getting a 1.6.0 and a 1.8.1 version for JUnit Platform Commons. One is coming from JUnit Jupyter API, and one is coming from Jersey Test Framework. So let's exclude this older one from Jersey Test Framework Core. Okay, so for this one, we'll say that, and for this one, we'll say use newer version from, where'd it come from? JUnit Jupyter API. All right, and these are sorted alphabetically. How about this one? So this one is, the newest one is coming from JAX-RS runtime. So Jersey Test Framework Core is bringing in 3.0, so we can exclude this from Jersey Test Framework Core. And we'll move this one up. If I remember, we got it from JAX-RS runtime. Yeah, there we go. So we'll use the newer version from JAX-RS runtime 3.0.1, and we'll ignore, or we'll exclude from Jersey Test Framework. All right, and this last one, we've got 1.1.2 is the newer one. So JUnit Jupyter API is newer than what we're getting from Framework Core, and Framework Core. So we'll add an exclusion to Framework Core for the same reason as this one, or actually as this one. I'll move that one to right here. All right, so that should fix these convergence problems. Now, since all of these were just minor version, well, I guess this one was a minor version update, so potentially there are some backwards compatibility issues here. But since this is all part of testing, as long as our unit tests and integration tests run, or our unit tests currently that we have, and potentially in the future our integration tests when we add them, as long as they continue to run, I'm not too worried about this version difference. All right, some enforcer rules still failed. So it seems like I didn't quite do this correctly. So Jersey Test Framework Core. And, okay, so I excluded API Guardian from Jersey Test Framework Core. So that should have excluded all 3 of these. And then we should continue to use this one. And JUnit Platform Commons, is that one that I excluded as well? What am I missing here? So did this not save? Oh, or did I scroll up too far? Okay. So I don't know what I was looking at before, but I should have been looking at these warnings instead of convergence warnings, or maybe I never scrolled back down or something. All right, so now we have these dependency problems, non-test scope, test only dependencies found. We'll look at that one in a second. Unused, declared. Okay, so these make sense because I added this one just for convergence, and I added this one just so that we have a provider for Jetty running our test resources. So let's go ahead and mark these as ignored because we do want these. And then apparently we're using JUnit, but really I don't want to use JUnit. I want to use, yeah, this is the wrong test. I don't want that JUnit test. I want, org.JUnit Jupyter API. So let me do a fresh clean there. Meanwhile, I'll come up to here to this top level palm. All right, and we'll add some more. Basically, I want to add both of these. So I'm going to grab this. And the other one, pretty much the longest dependency. All right. So non-test scoped, test only dependency. So this thinks I'm only using the JAX-RS API during test scope. However, I'm definitely using it here, or for the, yeah, like I seem to be using it here, not statically as well. So I definitely can't just make it test scope only. Well, unless these don't actually come from that. I don't know when I clicked there. There we go. So yeah, this definitely comes from Jakarta WS-RS API, which is what it's complaining about. Now that I fixed these other ones, let me run it again just to verify. All right, what I'll do is I'll take a look at this offline and see if I can figure out what's going on with this dependency and explain it in the next video. Thanks a lot. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.